I'm going to show you 5 different ways to make the same cookie. I won't be going into too much detail for the basics of cookie decorating, but I would definitely make more videos with more in-depth explanations, if you really want me to. The 5 different cookies will be dipped with royal icing transfer, filled with royal icing transfer, dip and filled Barbie head, outlined cookie and shape and fill separately, and filled cookie with the filled Barbie head. These probably sound all confusing, but I didn't know how else to title them. We only need 2 colors for this design, light pink and a darker pink. I made sure to make much more light pink since that is going to be the background for most of the cookies. Then filling bags. This is one of the best things I've learned in my whole cookie career, using a cup to help with filling the icing bags. It's so much easier and so much cleaner. Moving on to the royal icing transfers, I used a thin piece of cardboard, a printed paper of the Barbie head design to trace, and wax paper on top, plus these clippy things so everything isn't sliding all around. I'm using a smaller bag with a smaller tip to outline the shape, and I'll fill it with thinner icing. For the royal icing transfers, you're going to want to let them sit and dry for quite a while. I did not do that, and that was a mistake. Now we're going to prep the dip icing. This is the icing we're going to dip the cookies in to have a base to decorate on. To make the dip icing, you need to try to get the icing the consistency to be thin enough to settle flatly, but thick enough that it won't just slide off the cookie. Make sure to add very small amounts of water at a time, maybe a teaspoon at a time. I've even seen people use spray bottles. So once you get the icing to a consistency you're comfortable with, I'm showing you what to look for when you're mixing the icing. You want it to kind of settle back into itself so it has a flat surface. Usually, after mixing like this, there will be a lot of bubbles in the icing, and bubbles are bad. Preferably, you would let the icing sit for an hour or so covered up so all the bubbles can float to the top, and you can lightly run your spatula over the top of the icing and pop the bubbles. I didn't wait, so I have a lot of bubbles and a lot of problems. When you are dipping the cookie, you need to make sure you have a good grip on it. I like to dip it and keep hold of it. Some people like to just let it sit on top for a second and then pick it up, but you just want to make sure you're not dipping it too deep in the icing. Depending on how thick your cookie is, mine are 1/4 inch thick. I would say just dip until the icing just barely touches the tips of your fingers, and when you lift the cookie out, just try to wiggle it a little bit and let some of the icing drip off. You don't want too much icing on the cookie so much that it slides off, but you also don't want too little to where you can see the cookie, the naked cookie underneath. So here you can see the perfect edges of a dipped cookie, and then some of the spots the icing started to fall off the cookie, so there was probably too much icing in that one spot. But that's fine, we will just fix it up in a little bit. I'm just using this little knife to go around the edge and then spray more glitter on it so it blends in. One of my mantras is, when in doubt, glitter it. So that cookie is a dipped cookie. The base of the cookie is dipped. Now we're gonna do an outlined and filled cookie. This way is probably the more classic way, and basically the name says it. You just outline the cookie and then you're gonna fill the cookie. I would say to finish the background on all of the cookies that you're doing first and then move on to the further steps of decorating. I like to let my background dry for a while before going to the next steps. Now we will move to the royal icing Barbie head transfers from earlier that you let dry for a long time. I did not, so I'm removing it from the wax paper with an X-Acto knife. But you shouldn't be doing that. You're letting it dry long enough so you can just peel the wax paper off easily. Now, at the end of the day, no one sees the struggles that were had during the whole cookie process. And I honestly think your customer shouldn't know, because you have been chosen to take care of this for them. They should feel no stress. Removing my Barbie head, I had to be extra careful. You can kind of see where the head was still sticking to the wax paper. I just let our friend Gravity help me out. So when you want to place the royal icing transfer on the cookie, I left this part in so you can see what not to do, because apparently I just make mistakes all the time. At first I put some icing on the cookie to glue the head on. Obviously that didn't work, I noticed right away. So I had to put the icing on the back of the head and gently lay it down. This may be scary for you if you haven't done it before because the transfers are very fragile, but one of the best pieces of advice I can give to you is to not think too much, just do it. Don't think, just do. And if you do mess something up, don't freak out. I did used to be more of a perfectionist, but the longer you do this, you start to calm down a bit about everything. Now this cookie is one of the cookies I dipped. When your base icing is dry, it's time to move on to the next step where you will be tracing the Barbie head onto the base icing. I'm using my cookie scribe. You can totally just use a toothpick, and I'm just lightly going around the head to give myself a general outline to go over with the icing. Once the traced outline is done, I will use a smaller icing bag with a smaller tip to go over the outline. No need to rush, you're kind of just letting the icing fall onto the cookie. You just need to guide the line of icing. I wanted to pause and show what you want to see when you're outlining. Normally you don't want your icing tip touching the cookie base. It's not like writing with a pen. You see this part where I'm putting squiggles on it. It's not just decoration, it actually serves a purpose. There's this problem people have when doing royal icing cookies called cratering. It's just one of many struggles of decorating cookies. I wanted to show two of the most popular ways to try to prevent the cratering. For this one, I'm going to show you the squiggle method. Now, you don't need to do it everywhere. You don't need to squiggle everywhere. The cratering mostly happens in areas that are kind of skinny, so I squiggled the parts I thought that would be most susceptible to cratering. I would say don't let the squiggle dry too long. I think you kind of want it to meld with the icing you put on top of it. On the last cookie, I will show the other method to prevent craters. This next cookie, we are just going to take a naked cookie and this time trace the head directly onto the cookie. For this, I will do an outline on the outside of the cookie and then another outline around the Barbie head. And then each section is filled separately. You can either fill each section one right after the other with no dry time, but I prefer to have some dry time to prevent color bleeding, which is another huge cookie decorating issue, or another huge cookie decorating issue that I have. Now, after filling both sections and letting dry, you can leave it or outline the head for a more finished look, although I think I ruined it by doing the outline in this one. This cookie has already been outlined, filled, and dried, so we just do the same thing we did with the other dipped cookie. We trace the outline of the head, but for this one, I'm going to show you another method for preventing craters. This is the hole poking method. I don't know the science behind it, but it seems to work for people. So you just poke the holes and fill in the head. You can even do both methods if you want. Why not? Be extra careful. And here's the final result of each of the 5 ways I showed you in the video. There aren't huge differences in these, and really there are just infinite ways to do decorated cookies. I thought it would be cool to compare these methods. Then I cut each one in half to see the cookie to icing ratio, and I gave all the halves to my husband. He was happy about that. So I used to always do the 4th method, but this time, for the order I had, I did the 5th method. I just think it looks the nicest.